The moment the hot coffee hit my face, the entire room went silent. The cup shattered on the kitchen floor, and the smell of burnt coffee filled the air while I sat there frozen in my chair. Across the table, my own daughter stood breathing heavily, staring at me like I was the enemy. And in the hallway, my 10-year-old grandson had just woken up and witnessed everything. At 68 years old, after a lifetime of working, sacrificing, and raising my child with everything I had, I never imagined the morning would end like this. But what shocked me even more than the coffee she threw was the reason she did it. And the truth behind that moment would change the way I looked at my own family forever. Welcome to my YouTube channel Whisper Stories, where silence speaks. My name is Addison, and I am 68 years old. At 68, a man believes he has already survived the storms life can offer. You think the difficult years are behind you. You imagine that the sacrifices you made while raising your children have planted deep roots of love and respect in their hearts. But one quiet morning at my own kitchen table, my daughter picked up a cup of hot coffee and threw it directly at my face. And in that moment, I realized something that hurt far more than the burning coffee on my skin. I realized that sometimes the people you love the most can become strangers. The morning had started like any other. Sunlight slipped through the thin curtains in my small kitchen, painting warm lines across the old wooden table I had owned for nearly 30 years. The house was quiet except for the ticking clock on the wall and the faint sound of birds outside. I had always loved quiet mornings. After 40 years working as a mechanic, mornings had once meant rushing to work before sunrise, hands already smelling of grease and engine oil. But retirement had given me something rare and beautiful. Peace. Or at least that was what I thought. I sat at the table with my cup of coffee and the morning newspaper, enjoying the calm. My daughter, Rachel, had moved back in with me about 6 months earlier after her divorce. She was 36 now, with a 10-year-old son named Lucas, my only grandson. When Rachel first arrived with her suitcase and tired eyes, I didn't hesitate for even a second. "This is your home," I told her. "Because that's what fathers do. We open our doors even when our hearts know the house might never feel quiet again." At first, things were fine. Rachel found a job at a marketing company downtown. Lucas started school nearby. The house filled with noise again, laughter, arguments about homework, cartoons playing too loudly in the living room. It reminded me of when Rachel herself was a child. Back then, she used to run through the same hallway wearing pink socks that slid across the wooden floor. Her laughter used to echo through every room. Those were good memories. The kind you hold onto when you grow old. But slowly, things began to change. Rachel started coming home later. Some nights she seemed irritated before she even walked through the door. Bills piled up on the kitchen counter, and I noticed she began borrowing money more often. "Just until my next paycheck," she would say. And I always said yes. Because that's what fathers do. But that morning, the morning everything changed, I sensed something was wrong the moment she walked into the kitchen. Her footsteps were sharp and heavy. She didn't say good morning. Instead, she dropped her purse onto the table and sat down across from me. "Dad, I need your credit card," she said. Not "can I borrow it?" Not "would you mind helping me?" Just "I need it." I folded my newspaper slowly. "What for?" I asked. She rubbed her forehead, clearly irritated by the question. "I have some expenses, I'll pay it back." "How much are we talking about?" Rachel sighed loudly. "Why does it matter?" Because it did matter. At 68, I lived on a fixed retirement income. I wasn't a rich man. Everything I had was the result of decades of hard work and careful saving. "I just want to understand," I said gently. She looked away. "About $4,000. I nearly dropped my coffee cup. $4,000. Rachel rolled her eyes. "It's not that big of a deal." To her, maybe. To me, it was months of careful budgeting. "What do you need it for?" I asked again. Her voice sharpened. "A vacation." I blinked. "A vacation?" "Yes," she snapped. "My friends are going to Mexico next week." The room fell silent. "You want me to pay for a vacation," I said slowly. She leaned back in her chair. "You're retired, Dad. You barely spend money. What's the problem?" The problem wasn't the money. It was the attitude. I took a deep breath. "Rachel, I helped you when you needed a place to live. I help with groceries. I help with Lucas. But I can't spend $4,000 on a vacation." Her eyes hardened instantly. "You're serious?" "Yes." She leaned forward, anger rising in her voice. "You have savings. That savings is for emergencies. This is important to me." "No, Rachel," I said quietly, "it's not." That was the moment everything exploded. Rachel stood up so quickly, the chair scraped loudly across the floor. "You're unbelievable," she shouted. "Lower your voice," I said calmly. "Lucas is sleeping." "Oh please," she snapped. "You act like you're broke." "That's not the point." "No, the point is you're selfish." Selfish. That word hit harder than she probably realized. For 40 years, I had worked long hours to give her everything she needed. I paid for her school supplies, her college tuition, her first car, her wedding, and now, at 68 years old, I was selfish for refusing to fund a vacation. I shook my head slowly. "Rachel, I love you, but the answer is no." Her face turned red with anger. And before I could even react, she grabbed her coffee cup and threw it. The hot liquid splashed across my shirt and cheek. The cup hit the floor and shattered. For a moment, neither of us moved. The kitchen smelled like burnt coffee and shock. Rachel stared at me, breathing heavily. I sat frozen in my chair. Not because of the coffee, but because of the realization settling in my chest. This was the little girl I once carried on my shoulders. And she had just thrown coffee in my face. A small voice appeared in the hallway. "Mom!" Lucas stood there, rubbing his eyes. He looked at the broken cup on the floor, then at my soaked shirt. "What happened?" Rachel grabbed her purse. "Nothing," she muttered. Then she stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind her. The silence that followed felt heavier than anything I had ever experienced. Lucas looked at me with worried eyes. "Grandpa, are you okay?" I forced a small smile. "I'm fine, buddy." But inside, my heart felt like something fragile had just cracked. Rachel didn't come home that night. Or the next. 3 days passed. I spent those days taking Lucas to school, cooking dinner, and quietly cleaning the coffee stain from the kitchen floor. I didn't call Rachel. Not because I didn't care, but because sometimes people need space to see their own reflection. On the 4th evening, she finally came home. She walked into the kitchen slowly. Her eyes were red. She looked smaller somehow, like the anger had drained out of her. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I didn't speak right away. I simply looked at my daughter. The same girl who once cried when her goldfish died. The same girl who used to hold my hand while crossing the street. Now standing there, ashamed. "I shouldn't have done that," she said, her voice shaking. "No," I replied quietly, "you shouldn't have." Tears rolled down her cheeks. I don't know what's wrong with me lately. Life had hurt her. Divorce, stress, fear about money. Sometimes pain turns into anger when people don't know how else to carry it. But that didn't make it right. She sat down at the kitchen table. "I feel like everything in my life is falling apart," she admitted. For the first time in months, she sounded honest. Not defensive. Just tired. I sat across from her. "Rachel," I said gently, "running away to Mexico won't fix your problems." She wiped her tears. "I know. You're not alone," I continued, "but you can't treat people who love you like enemies." She nodded slowly. "I was wrong. Over the next few weeks, things slowly began to change. Rachel started budgeting her money. She began cooking dinner instead of ordering takeout. Most importantly, she started spending more time with Lucas. Sometimes growth doesn't happen in big dramatic moments. Sometimes it happens quietly, in small decisions made every day. One evening, Lucas sat beside me on the porch while the sun dipped below the trees. "Grandpa," he asked, "are you mad at Mom?" I thought about the question. Then I smiled. "No, buddy. Why not? Because holding on to anger for too long can poison a heart." And at 68 years old, I have learned something important. Family is complicated. People make mistakes. Sometimes very painful ones. But love gives us a choice. We can build walls. Or we can build understanding. Rachel came outside a moment later and sat beside us. For a while, none of us spoke. We simply watched the sunset. And in that quiet moment, I felt something return that I thought had been lost forever. Hope. Moral of the story: no matter how much we love our family, respect must always exist in both directions. Money can create tension, but anger and pride can destroy relationships far faster. True strength is not found in shouting or throwing things in moments of frustration. It is found in humility, accountability, and the courage to apologize. And sometimes, the greatest lesson a parent can teach is simply saying no. Because love without boundaries can slowly turn into resentment. But love with wisdom can rebuild even the most broken moments. And at 68 years old, I have learned this truth. The most valuable thing a parent can give their children is not money. It is guidance, patience, and the chance to grow into better people.